This episode of the Manufacturing and Engineering podcast features Chief Exec of Make UK, Stephen Phipson CBE. Lots of great insight from their perspective that is so broad across all aspects of manufacturing. It's really not to be missed. So, Stephen Phipson, thank you so much for your time today to join us on the M&E podcast. Make UK, obviously, an integral and premier partner with us in the launch and delivery of Manufacturing and Engineering Week. So we're delighted to have you on. Thank you.
Thank you, Ed. It's great to be with you. Thank you. And we're very, very, very keen and very excited to be part of this whole initiative. I think it's going to be great next year.
Fantastic. Yes, me too. So obviously, for most people in manufacturing and engineering, you would hope everybody, Make UK needs no introduction. But I think it'd be really great for you to give us an overview of what Make UK is about and what you're currently working on.
Sure, good. Okay, so yeah, Make UK. So was formerly the Engineering Employers Federation. I changed the name when I joined, so we had something that was fresh and appealed to the younger engineers in the community. Basically, the organisation's been around for 125 years, so it's the largest national employers organisation for manufacturing, and we represent all subsectors of manufacturing. And basically what we do is several things, really, more than just a sort of traditional trade body. We obviously have a big policy team sitting in London, and their job is about influencing government policy, working with ministers, and trying to make sure manufacturing is at the heart of all the decision-making in government. We can come on and talk about that in more detail in terms of priorities. We also run a very large HR legal support service for manufacturers across the country. That's been there for many years, and we've got a very strong track record in delivering value to manufacturers on that basis. Some household names are actually clients of ours in that respect, which is a good part of the business. We also have a very strong link with the Health and Safety Executive. In fact, a number of previous chief executives and chairmen have also been the chief exec and chairman of the Health and Safety Executive. And of course, that's key to a lot of manufacturing processes. And as a result of that, we deliver a lot of training around health and safety in factories, around about 17,000 courses a year with our team across, again, it's distributed across all the different regions of the UK. So that's very strong. And probably one of the parts I'm most proud about is our contribution to the skills agenda. We're one of the largest apprentice training providers in the country, and up in Birmingham, we have the largest site where we have around 1,500 engineering apprentices doing some of the latest engineering apprenticeships there are around mechatronics and robotics and those sorts of things. And we do that for hundreds of companies, of course, largely across the West Midlands. But we also support schools engagement across the country and encouraging youngsters into a very exciting sector in manufacturing. So as you can see, quite a few different things. We're a team of about 350 people across the UK and doing very, very well as having about 22,000 companies that we represent directly. That's kind of around about 1 million people out of the 2.7 million people employed in the manufacturing sector in this country. So really proud about that. It's great. We could always do with more members, of course, but we absolutely do this for the benefit of the manufacturing sector in the country.
Well, that's a strong overview and resume there. That 350 people doesn't seem like quite enough to deliver everything you've just talked about there.
Yeah, my team always says that as well, Ed, I can tell you. There's not
yeah.
hours in the day.
Exactly that. That's the sign of a good chief exec, though, isn't it? We're doing all this and we're going to do great more, and everyone's just like, no. But no, phenomenal work and reach. And one of the things that obviously is a huge topic at the moment is, I'm not going to use the B word. I promised at the start we won't use it. But obviously we are now in a position where as a nation, the government is negotiating trade deals, looking at different ways of doing things uniquely just as the United Kingdom. And so within that, both export for our existing manufacturing base and also inward investment of bringing people in, so plants are put into the UK, is a huge part of their agenda and strategy. So within that, what is it that makes the UK such a great fit for both export and inward investment?
The real, I think, crux of the matter here is that the UK over the last 20, 30 years has developed into a very strong advanced technology, advanced manufacturing country. We're in the top 10. We're currently number 9 in the world in terms of manufacturing output. But what's really important has been the long-term investment in advanced manufacturing technologies. And actually, I would say supported very well by government through the Catapult network that we've got in the UK, which covers everything from advanced manufacturing through to 3D additive printing and all the other support processes that have helped thousands of businesses really make advanced technology type products. And that's been really, really important. So we're not really in the consumer product area, you know, the low cost manufacturing area. I mean, obviously we do consumer products. Cars, automotive is a very big part of what we do. But we're very, very good at the very advanced manufacturing technologies. And so it's on that basis that we encourage, first of all, inward investment. People come to the UK because we're highly innovative and we have all of this support structure around advanced manufacturing. So I would put us as a leader in, for example, in additive manufacturing, 3D printing, and the use of those in manufacturing technologies. We're extremely good at integration, bringing things together and forming final products in very advanced manufacturing sites. We're very good at automation, and that goes very well for many countries that are looking for a place to invest for them advanced manufacturing type products. So the UK is really, really good at that. I think obviously we've got a very good skilled labour force as well, very highly qualified. We've been putting a lot of effort into graduate engineers. We have a very strong cadre of those. There's more we could do on the vocational skills, but that's another subject. But in terms of attracting people here, that's been working very, very well. So on the attracting side, you can see that in terms of inward investment, that's key. I also think there's a new trend. I mean, again, without using the B word, we have this whole idea now of supply chain resilience. Something we've learned through the pandemic in the sector is that it's actually quite difficult sometimes to rely on those very long supply chains. So as well as inward investment coming from overseas, we're also looking at investing more internally to onshore products that were previously outsourced to other countries. And that's driving growth in the investment in the manufacturing sector. If we think about exports, 53% of the exports of the UK are manufactured goods. So the sector punches way above its weight. I mean, we often hear it's only 10 or 12% of GDP, but it's 53% of what we export. So that advanced manufacturing export, absolutely critical. Of course, the EU countries in total have been our largest customer, but we've also done very well with the United States. 20% of the exports go to the United States. And in many of these new trade deals, what we're trying to do is open up the opportunity for that advanced manufacturing to be part of the export drive in other territories, and particularly in the growing economies around Asia. Very, very important to make sure the UK's advanced manufacturing is well represented and supported by government to go out there and export. So a lot of companies really interested in exploring those new markets from the UK. So that's very positive. People are looking at that. And also, of course, trying to maintain, as under the new conditions, as much as we can with our existing customers in Europe. So there's a bit of a balance there. But I think it's, from both inward investment perspective and exporting, it's a very exciting time for many, many companies.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think you can see there's an energy and you can see the way that it's being described, particularly in terms of product development, the cutting edge nature of what we produce. And I think that's part and parcel of that. I was talking to Will Butler-Adams, and we were talking about the perception still of manufacturing and engineering within the wider community, within the nation, and particularly at the parental level, where we're saying, you know, encourage your children and young people to coming in. And it's still their kind of manufacturing being sort of dirty kind of thing, and it's far, far from that.
I agree with you. I mean, we've done some great surveys on this around public perception of the sector, and you know, still most of the public don't quite understand or haven't got the message that we're in the top 10 manufacturing countries in the world. They think that was a profession we did years ago in the 70s or something, and not where we are now. And there's still a view of these, you know, Victorian factories with dark, dirty shop floors and smokestacks and things like that. You go around most manufacturing plants, they are nothing like that. They are very high-tech places, and we've moved a long way on. So we do have some work to do to increase that perception, I think, with the public, definitely.
Absolutely. But what I'd like to, because whilst we've got you, which I'm very cognizant of your time and very grateful for it, is that because of the nature of your position and the organisation that you lead, you've got a kind of a unique crow's nest view of every market and every industry without being embedded in one particular one, which I think is a fabulous view to have. So with this unique view, what do you think are the biggest opportunities that you can see for UK manufacturers across the board, and how can they take advantage of them?
So I think the key to this is innovation, Ed. When we look at what's going on in the UK at the moment, of course, we've heard a lot about things, and we'll talk about net zero and those sorts of areas. But the innovation that's happening in this country at the moment around new types of technology for hydrogen production, for carbon capture, those sorts of things, coupled with a real push on digitization of the sector. So really pushing hard on getting as many of those smaller companies on the journey towards digitalization, because that helps you with productivity and, again, with net zero, reducing emissions. Those things are really exciting areas. The companies that are innovating in those new product areas are, in many cases, and I would say this, wouldn't I, but they are world leading. And I have certainly sat in some of the preparatory work with government around some of the trade deals. And one of the things that other countries are really interested in is getting access to those innovative new companies coming up with new products and new processes which are really relevant to the challenges we've got going forward. So I'm very excited about that. I think that's fantastic. And I've seen so many great, and just, as you say, I'm quite privileged to be in that position, but I've seen so many good examples of companies, large and small companies, coming up with some of the latest innovations in advanced manufacturing, whether it's in materials or whether it's to do with some of those new technologies that are going to be required going forward. So again, it's not about the old-fashioned type manufacturing. We still have some of that, but it's all about where we go now with some of these new innovations we've got with new materials and new products into these new markets. And I think that's going to give us some great growth for the future.
No, I agree. And you alluded to it back in that answer there, but net zero obviously remains top of everyone's agenda. And it's something that, I saw a piece that you had in a letter from the MP responsible, Andrew Griffith, on being responsible as the UK net zero champion. It is a huge focus for both government and industry and globally across all markets. So what advice would you give manufacturers as they approach this particular topic?
Well, there's a few things that need to be done, and we can think about this in two halves. One is the new product opportunities, because there's a lot of new product opportunities, and obviously we're going to go through waves of upgrades and changes in our infrastructure, everything from boilers in houses through to what we're doing about offshore wind generation, the next generation of that, hydrogen production. So there's a whole raft of where do you want to pick your new markets and where do you want to manufacture products for those new markets. That's a great opportunity on one side. On the other side, it's about greening the operations. And I'm very pleased to say, Ed, we've got some great examples of very large factories now, which are getting to the point of being off-grid in terms of energy. They're almost becoming, they will in a year or two's time be completely energy efficient. Nothing consumed from the grid, generating their own wind and solar and hydrogen type energy plants to be able to fulfill their own energy demands. And that's a really interesting thing, because what the smaller companies can do is learn from some of those experiences. That's very important, and really not to underestimate the role of digitization in this. What we have seen is those companies that have really adopted digitization not only become more productive, but they become much more efficient, and of course that means that they are contributing very positively to the net zero agenda. So a good starting point is the digitization process, and then learning. And we do that in clusters around the country now, learning from others' experience about how they've managed their energy requirements to reduce them and to become more and more self-sufficient. If we look at big energy users like the steel industry, for example, they've done a lot of work over the last 18 months on the new Green Steel deal, which is all about how you use carbon capture around steel making to make it net zero. These are really exciting developments. And again, in many of these, we're leading the way, and lots of countries want to learn from our experience. So that's there's some very good tips there about how companies can get on that journey, I think, Ed.
No, it is exciting. I mean, I must admit, I'm a big Brewdog fan. Right. So other beers are available.
Yes.
But in my fridge you won't find any. And I'm, without digging into their business particularly, but I know they were very proud of that whole concept of taking themselves off grid, their own solar farm, their own wind farm, and creating that. And it seems to be that kind of that urgency throughout industry to make sure, and particularly from newer companies, those kind of startup disruptors who are, as you say, identifying new product ranges and new ways of doing things, where they're coming straight in at that level, bypassing the need to come through other areas. So, but when you talk about digitization, that leads us into another area which I know Make UK is very much leading on and is championing, and which can often be kind of ignored as part and parcel of the manufacturing discussion, which is about cyber protection. And it's that kind of that threat risk. Is it real or imagined? I mean, is this is this something manufacturers need to take seriously, and how should they go about it?
Very interestingly, again, we get a lot of our research from surveying hundreds and thousands of businesses, and one of the barriers to adoption of new digital type technologies has been the worry about cyber security and how secure their factories are. And the reason that's a worry is quite interesting. In many cases, if you go and buy a cyber security package, it's quite good at protecting your financial system or your ERP system. What it's not very good at, and where people have had difficulty, and we've got many examples of this, is where you've got machines connected to the internet for maintenance purposes or for downloading designs, and they're sort of outside the traditional area of the main ERP system or financial system of the company. So whilst some companies think they're well protected, they're not at all protected when it comes down to the IoT devices, things that are connected to the internet and are part of their production process. And we have seen, unfortunately, some very difficult examples where companies have been hacked through those routes, and their IP has been taken out by obviously overseas companies that have been in some cases state sponsored to do that. So we're actually helping many companies now with a much more comprehensive approach to this, something that's tailored for smaller companies so it doesn't cost a fortune, but actually looks at the whole system, where you are connected in, when you digitize, when you have IoT, so internet connected devices running your production, for example, to make sure that there's the appropriate safeguards in place to make sure they're not hacked and the IP is not stolen out of the factory. So this is really tailoring the cyber security arrangements to suit manufacturing, whereas most of the standard off-the-shelf ones don't do that. And it's really important that we give people confidence, and if they can see there's those kinds of solutions out there and they're relatively affordable and low cost, then it gives them confidence to go and digitize their factories. And that's really the message we've been pushing to the manufacturing community, particularly at the SME level, which is very, often these guys are working 24 hours a day. They don't have time to think. The last thing they are is cyber security experts. So Make UK is there to help them, get them through that journey, basically.
Yeah, well, and it's an important one, as you say, because in innovation and development, one of the most precious things that you have when you're creating products as an OEM, be it as an SME or whatever level, is that innovation. It's that intellectual property. That is your value.
Absolutely.
And if somebody is able to access it and take it and duplicate it somewhere else, it can be very, very difficult to protect legally through the courts, particularly depending on the geography in the world.
Yeah.
Once again, Will was saying when I spoke to him, there are areas where they've gone to court to protect the IP of Brompton, and there are other parts of the world where they just haven't bothered because it's just not even worth the candle of trying, because no one's going to listen.
Exactly.
So if you can protect it at source.
Exactly. And that's what we're trying to push. And actually, we're having great success with it. And also, it's very important we get the larger companies involved in that, because what they can do is then help their supply chain to do this in a cyber secure way. So we are seeing more and more of the larger companies like really concentrating on how to assist their supply chain to do it. And we're working with them on that route as well. So this is all part of that overall push on digitization and making sure that we can protect the IP. Coming back to the original point, Ed, this is an innovative manufacturing sector. We're known for our advanced manufacturing, so we are a target. People like to come and take some of that IP. So making sure it's protected is absolutely vital at this stage, and will become more vital as we go through the next couple of years, definitely.
Yeah, no, couldn't agree more. Very conscious of your time, very grateful for it. So to wrap up, coming back to that kind of that eagle-eye view that you have of the industry, of all the things you get to see, what's the thing that you've seen or experienced, or what's particularly exciting from your perspective personally for manufacturing at the moment?
I think there's lots of things. I mean, we've spoken about some of the new product innovations We've spoken about leadership positions and things like additive manufacturing, where, if you go to the MTC in Coventry, which is the part of the Catapult system, you'll see some of the most advanced technologies in the world applied to manufacturing for 3D technologies. I think all of that is great, and we can give loads of examples in every area. I think I'm excited about the use of AI. I see many factories now, some of the larger factories, using AI very effectively at improving their productivity. I like that. But I always come back to the same point, Ed. What excites me the most is the youngsters that are coming into the sector. And we need to encourage many more youngsters to take up apprenticeships, but having the opportunity to talk to our apprentices at our training centre up in Birmingham, where we've got this large cohort of keen young engineers doing their training on robots and mechatronics and everything else, seeing the enthusiasm, seeing the new ideas that are coming through, those fresh ideas from a perspective of people that are used to using now iPads and technology and everything else, and applying that to manufacturing is really exciting. What we need to do is get many more excited about entering the sector, because that's where our future is and that's what's driving innovation. So if you want to ask me what's the most exciting, it's those youngsters coming into the sector, really. That's the most exciting part of it.
Yeah, and many more to come in, we hope.
Yeah, exactly.
Stephen Phipson, thank you so much for your time and for your insight. We really appreciate it, and thanks for being on the podcast, and thanks for supporting Manufacturing and Engineering Week.
Fantastic. My pleasure. Thank you very much, Ed. Appreciate it.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Manufacturing and Engineering podcast. You'll be able to download the audio file of the podcast from all the usual podcast channels. Keep your eyes peeled, and there'll be many more guests coming along, as we have several already that have been produced and many more guests being lined up. So stay tuned, stay with us, and we hope that you've enjoyed the show.